Hi people, the year is quickly coming to an end. Are you stressing to smash your goals or are you resting from smashing your goals? Well, if you're considering resting, please do not forget to rest your mind as well. And in today's video, I'm going to be sharing one of the catalysts for a healthy mind: boundaries. Hi guys, my name is Maya and you're welcome to one of my favorite TED Talks. Yes, so please do well to like, share, and subscribe. And let's get right into this video. You're welcome back. All right, so what are boundaries? Boundaries are limits established, to define what you're comfortable with and what you're not comfortable with, right? And you see, this subject is so important that it's existed even right from the creation. You can see that in the Garden of Eden, when God told Adam and Eve, you can feast on every other thing except this tree. And there was a reason for that, right? God had an idea, God had a purpose for that. So boundaries always exist for a purpose. Boundaries are rooted in, purposes, strong purposes, and that's why they are very intentional, right? It's not something you just decide to do out of the blues. It's an intentional, act. So think of boundaries as a territory. You know those movies where this kingdom is fighting against this kingdom. This kingdom wants to get something from this other kingdom. You watch cartoons and movies a lot, you understand. So think about it as territories, right? So you have your territory and you own your territory, you built your territory, you're in charge of your territory, you know everything that is going on. Yeah, you're the boss, you're the king, of the territory. And you are in charge of the territory, you control everything that happens in the territory, you are responsible for that territory, right? And so because you have probably invested so much time, effort, resources in grooming your territory, you do not want it contaminated, right? You do not want it contaminated. So what you do is you create like a gate. So if somebody from and not a wall, I will explain that later, so that you are not totally shutting the other territories out, because relationships are where many times boundaries have to play out, right? And if there are no relationships, so where does boundaries come to play? But you're just building some sort of a barricade, a gate that you can open when you want to allow other territories in, and close when you want to shut the other territories out, right? I think that's a good way to think about it. Another important thing I think people should pay attention to when it comes to boundaries is the fact that as much as you're grooming your territory and guiding your territory, you want to also be responsible enough, right, not to go against the rules of the other territories. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. So yes, you're grooming your territory, you are guiding your territory, you're nurturing your territory. At the same time, you're nurturing yourself to be responsible enough, right? So when other territories tell you, oh, this is how we do, in our territory, this is how we operate, these are our standards and all of that, you have also worked on yourself enough, you are responsible enough to comply. So you don't want to be that kind of person building barricades and not complying, to the barricades built by others. Another thing you need to know about boundaries is that boundaries are everywhere. Boundaries are everywhere. Boundaries are almost everything. Right? So that you know that it's closer to you than you can imagine. It's not just in your head, it's not just in your mind. Boundaries are everywhere. Look around you, look at your skin. Your skin is a boundary, right? Your skin is there to prevent direct impact into your organs and other delicate parts of your body, right? Your skin is there, your eyelashes, you see boundaries even on social media, right? You nowadays you have the technology, right, to allow or disallow anything. You can block people from viewing your status, you can accept who you want to follow, you follow who you want to follow. Right? So boundaries are everywhere. It's also in our eating. If I want to eat food now, I can open my mouth. If I like the food and I want the food, probably because I have tasted the food before, I can open my mouth and I eat the food. And when I don't want to eat again, what do? I close my mouth. So another thing to note about boundaries is the fact that boundaries can change or expand as you evolve, right? So what I mean is, for example, maybe when you were earning a certain amount of money, you had a financial boundary, right? You had a limit to what you can, give out, probably for charity or to help people. And then with time, you grew and you began to earn more. right? Your boundaries can actually change. Your limits can increase. The same way, if you earn less, your limits can reduce, right? So do not think about boundaries as a gate that is built once and for all. I have guarded my territory, and this gate, I'm not going to develop it. This gate, I'm not going to innovate it. um this gate, I'm not even going to renovate it. I'm not going to paint it. I'm not going to polish it. I'm not going to reduce the height. I'm not going to refurbish it. No. Another thing to note about boundaries is, now when you're building the gates, right, you are not, the idea is not to control the other territory or change them. Many times you really do not have control or so much impact on how they should act, right? The only thing you're trying to establish is, you're just trying to affirm yours, right? You're just trying to affirm your territory. You're just trying to make it obvious that this is the limit, right? This is the point you guys will get to, and then you have to comply to my standards. You're just giving them clear options that they are seeing that it's either we dance to his tune or we go home. You understand? So that's the whole idea. You're not trying to change them. You're not trying to force anything on them. But what you're trying to do is, you're communicating your standards. You are affirming your standards. You are making clear your gates. You're making clear your limits. That is exactly what you're doing. So now, what are the types of boundaries? There's the physical boundary. Physical boundaries as in touch, um, um, touch, distance, closeness, and all of that. Physical boundaries. There's also the material boundaries. Material boundaries as in your property, what is allowed and what is not allowed with your property. Your materials, your phone, gadgets, or items. And there's the mental boundaries. Mental boundaries, maybe we can connect it to emotional boundaries. What are the things you want to hear? What are the things you want to let in? What are the things you can't take? What are the things that trigger you? By the way, if you have not watched the video on trigger words, please hurry now, hurry now and go and watch it. Anyway, we also have the relational boundaries. Relational boundaries in your relationship with family, in your relationship at work, in your relationship at work, in your relationship with your partner, in your relationship with at different levels, in church, everywhere, anywhere you find yourself, there has to be boundaries as well, on that level. So with your family, can they just come in at any time? How do you communicate your discomfort with them if you're not comfortable with them doing certain things or saying certain things? So that's that. At work, if you do not like how a particular colleague speaks with you, how do you communicate that? And when it's a boss, that's a different ball game altogether. In fact, that's a different study altogether. So let's not even get into that. Maybe some other time. Yeah. Also, there's a time boundary. How do you give out your time, right? Do you set boundaries around your time, or can people just access you at any time? Can people just get your attention at any time? Are you that available? Are you that available? So what are the boundaries you set around your time, with your time? So those are the different types of boundaries. But today, I really think we're going to narrow down to relational boundaries. Why are relational boundaries important? It just fosters that healthy interaction, that healthy environment. So you're talking with somebody, or you're communicating with somebody, right? You're relating with somebody, probably a social kind of relationship, and the person says a thing that you're not comfortable with, right? Then you go and you say, oh, okay, please, when it comes to this is the limits. This is where you can stop, and you have said it, and the person is responsible enough to respect that. Let's assume the person is responsible enough to respect your limits and your boundary, and the interaction improves immediately, which does not happen all the time. So let's say he's a responsible person, or he or she's a responsible person, and the interaction improves almost immediately. It just changes gear. You find out that you're happy, you're interacting better because there's a mutual understanding. So that's my number two. So number one is a better interactions. Number two, it grooms mutual understanding, right? So you tell me, and maybe somewhere in the conversation as well, if I cross, the person tells me, oh, this is it, this is the limit. And what makes you responsible is the fact that once the person is telling you their limit, you're not trying to make an attempt to cross it again. You're not intentionally trying to cross it again. That is really irresponsible. When someone tells you their limits, please respect their limits. And the reason why it's important is it promotes respect. So imagine that kind of conversation where one of the people in the conversation sees that, oh, I just told this person my limit and they are not trying to cross it, or they're not crossing it again. There's a level of respect you have for that person. I don't know about you, but for me, whenever I tell people my limits and they don't cross it, and they don't cross it anytime again in the future, there's a level of respect I have for that kind of person, right? And vice versa, right? So there's also this mutual respect, and everyone is you just want to have a healthy kind of conversation. You just want to have that kind of healthy energy. And let me put it that way, that healthy vibe, right? Where I know my limits, I stated my limits, and the person I'm communicating with respects my limits, and I'm also responsible enough to respect the other person's limits. See how cool that is? How cool is that? Oh God, I'm just always saying easier said than done. But then, yeah, these things are real. These things are real if we pay attention to them. You'll be wondering, how is this person acing these conversations? It's because they're paying attention to little things, very minute things as this. Another reason why relational boundaries are important is it just helps you focus better, right? So you're not, that moment where you're having a conversation with somebody and the person is constantly crossing your boundaries. The person is crossing the limits repeatedly. You're probably going to be irritated, and you might not even be paying attention to the conversation at that point. What's on your mind? And I'm speaking for myself as well. Many times when I find myself in that kind of situation, many times my mind is on, why exactly is this person doing this? Is this person doing this intentionally to annoy me? Or is he aware, or is he not aware? Is she aware, or is she not aware? So I'm losing focus on the conversation. And if it's an important conversation, then I'm not getting the point. And it's not even a conversation anymore, because I'm not listening. I'm not listening to what the person is saying. I'm only listening to my feelings at that point. I'm listening to how I'm feeling. I'm listening to, and my attention is divided. There's no focus. There's no focus at that point. And that's the truth. If you're truthful to yourself, you find out that when people are constantly crossing your boundaries, somebody comes to your house at a time that you are not comfortable with, and you did not communicate that, and the person is going on and on and on and on and on, and you're giving all those one answers, and the person too is not sensitive enough to spot the fact that this person is not comfortable. Because there are people that are very good with reading body language. I can do that very well. There are people that are very good with reading body language, looking at your eyes, looking at your body posture, looking at your paying attention to your responses, and they just know that, nah, this person is not comfortable, let me come and be going, let me just carry myself and be going. But then there are some other people that are not sensitive enough to spot that. You need to tell them, because if you're not telling them, you're just wasting both of your time. You're not invested in the conversation. So yeah, it helps us focus better. Okay, so now how do you set boundaries? Number one, and the most important, is self-awareness. Number one is self-awareness, because everything is you. Remember, I mentioned at the beginning that you can only control your territory, right? So self-awareness, another way to put it, is knowing your territory. You worked on that territory. You built some things, right? You have your values. You have your core values. You know yourself. You do not know it. What do you want to use to build your gates? Because what you use to build your gates is the knowledge you've gotten from your territory, resources you've gotten from your territory. These things are what make up your territory. So when you take note of them, you're building your territory. You're building your territory, and when you have a nurtured territory, a healthy territory, then you can say, oh, okay, you are coming over from your territory, please do not cross this boundary, because I am protecting, I have a territory I have nurtured, and I do not want to ruin it, right? So you are just going to communicate that. Well, how do you communicate that when you have not even built, you have not nurtured anything? Do you understand that? So it's important to be self-aware. It's important to nurture your territory. It's important to build. It's important to lay those foundations and lay it well. If you need to ask questions to say, oh, okay, is this normal? Am I going crazy if I don't like this? Sometimes I do that. Just make sure that you're laying the right foundation, that you're laying your foundation. And the next step, number two, the next thing you want to do when you have nurtured your territory, you have known, what you can allow or not allow, the next thing you want to do is to tell it. How does the other territory know if you do not tell them? How do they know they can't come into my gate if I don't build the gate, right? So you need to tell. You need to tell, and that's where tactfulness comes in. It's not everyone that is sensitive to body language. It's not everyone that knows that when you're not maintaining eye contact, in a conversation, they're not longer comfortable, or when they're beginning to fold their arms, or make certain movement, they're uncomfortable in the conversation. It's not everybody that is sensitive to that. So you need to tell, right? You need to assume that they are not aware and tell them, right? Tell them not in a rude way, in a very tactful way, but clear, right? I'm not going to go so much into that detail today. Maybe you can watch our previous videos. Sometimes when you tell, they still get to do it again. I will tell again, right? Some people have like the number of times. There's some people have the number of times. I've seen it and I read it somewhere. Some people say they tell 3 times and then they take an action, right? Some people say, oh, once I tell you once, that's enough for me. Some people say, oh, da 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 da. And truly, sometimes I believe that once you tell, depending maybe on your relationship with them, once you say a yes or no, yes, I accept this, no, I do not accept this, you might not always have to explain your no. You do not necessarily need to explain your no to everybody, right? It's probably an acquaintance or someone you just met that's crossing a boundary, or I do not like people to, go beyond handshake with me. That's enough. You might not necessarily need to explain your no. When you're telling, it's also important to have a response plan, right? So if I tell them once, I tell them twice, I tell them 3 times based on what I consider enough time or enough warning for me. If I tell them all of this time and they still do not comply, what's my response plan? Sometimes telling starts with an action. Yes. I mean, if these guys from the other territory are trying to invade you by force, you know that what they are coming with is harmful to your territory. You might not even need to warn them enough. You might not even need to warn them because that gate was enough warning, right? They saw the gates, right? And it's enough warning. All you need to do is just to tell them away. Yes. Sometimes you just need to tell away with action. You might not need to be speaking plenty English and say, oh, please, this is what I like and this is what I don't like. An example is on social media, on Instagram. I was on Instagram, scrolling on Instagram, and I got a message. And because my page is a business page, I thought it was a client. I rushed to check the message, and what I saw was really annoying. I got some of this one of these spam messages. I don't even know how they get people's contact to send them, and immediately, I did not even think about it. I blocked the sender. I blocked the sender from sending that message ever again, that kind of message ever again. Why? Because it's not in line with what I allow into my territory. Right, and at that point I really do not care about speaking English or letting you know what I mean. You If you scroll through my page, you know the kind of things I allow, right? So why would you see my gates and still go ahead to try to invade my territory? So immediately I blocked the contact. So yeah, sometimes when you're telling, you tell with an action. You just tell things away immediately. So that's what I mean by you might not necessarily always need to explain your no, right? Sometimes you just tell them away and that's enough, right? Some other times, if it's family or friends or people you have deep relationship with, then you might have to explain your no, and maybe it would help. Number 3, consistency. So they're still doing it. You have to keep telling. You have to keep reinforcing it, because that's one of the ways they'll know this person is serious. So this person will not come to play about this thing they are saying. So you would want to be consistent. You want to be consistent with what you're saying. You want to be consistent with all that you have set as standards. You want to make sure that you are consistent with them. Remember I said I blocked the sender of the spam message once. I still saw it again. It did not stop. I do not know how. I think I saw it a second time, I blocked again. I saw the third time, I blocked again, and then I reported, right? Initially I didn't know I could report, so I blocked and reported. I still saw it again. After blocking the third time or the fourth time, I never saw the message again. Do you understand? So consistency is important. Boundaries hold value when they are communicated and held up consistently. You want to be able to hold them up, and stand on them consistently. That way, people will take you seriously. Number 4 and the last, prepare for pushbacks. So you have to prepare for pushbacks. So what will be your consequences? So boundaries are not, there's a difference between requesting and setting boundaries. So it's beyond just asking them, I need you to do this, I need you to do that. Yeah, it's fine. Everybody asks for something. Everybody requests for something almost every day, right? So, but what makes it a boundary is the fact that you're letting them know that there are consequences attached to the same. If you keep doing this, I'm going to have to do this. And you are saying it respectfully, like we're not fighting. Right, I'm just letting you know that I do not allow this, and if you continue to do this, I would have to do this. An example is you you lend probably an utensil to your neighbor, right? And they never return it. You always have to go and collect it from them, right? And eventually you get to tell them, you get the opportunity to tell them. Told them the first time, they did it again. You've told them the second time, they did it again. You told them the third time, they did it again. And then you go, I'm sorry, if you do this again, I'm not going to lend you this thing again. And that's on my boundary. Okay, yeah. So you get the point. So for each of the gates you're building, what are the consequences you're attaching to them, right? So if these guys from the other territory come with something they can use to cut your gate, right? What are you going to do to enforce protection? So that's where your consequences come in, right? So if they're trying to invade your territory and you know that these people cannot just invade my territory, it's going to harm, it's going to harm this territory, it's going to harm what I have nurtured, right? How do I enforce it? You enforce it by coming up with consequences. Initially you were just telling them. Now you have to let them know the consequences. I'm sorry, if you do this again, I'm going to have to leave. If you say this again in this conversation, I'm going to have to walk away. If you repeat this again, I'm going to hang up. If you say it again, I'm going to. Then you are speaking of boundaries. All the while you have just been requesting, you have just been asking. You've just been trying to let them see reasons, right? And then they're repeating it, they're still doing it. Then you let them know the consequences. And that's you preparing for pushbacks. Because I cannot promise you, I cannot assure you that it will always go smoothly. In fact, you see, this boundaries conversation is one of the most uncomfortable conversations. It's one of the difficult conversations people do not like to have, right? People do not like to have in their relationships. Is at the same time is something that if you have mastered, and you're responsible enough to master it, and then the people you're relating with too are responsible enough to master it, then you're definitely going to be having healthy relationships. You're definitely going to be having healthy interactions, and everyone will be happy, right? So, but then the work is, who is mindful enough, who is responsible enough to pay attention to grooming grooming, their knowledge of boundaries, and mastering, the whole art and principle of boundaries. So once this is solved, almost all the conversational issues will be almost solved. So the big question I know someone is thinking about: what if after doing all of this, they still continue? What if, yes, it happens? Some people are just, I don't know. I really don't know. It actually happens, right? So you have done all of this and they are still coming at you, and you're still uncomfortable, you're still not settled in your mind, you're still not relaxed, you're still not comfortable. Yeah, that's the word. What if this happens? What do I do? And what you do, or what I would do, is to build my walls, right? So, irrespective of the level of relationship, I am communicating, my limits to you, my boundaries to you, and you are not complying. It means you do not respect the relationship. It means you do not respect me, one, and then it means you do not even respect the relationship, right? So if I do all of this and you're still repeating these things I have told you not to do, then what it means is that you are forcing me to build my walls. Remember, in my territory, I did not want to build walls. I just wanted gates so that I can open it and close it and allow you in. But for you, I'm going to build a wall, because we cannot depend on other people's actions. We cannot depend on other people's actions. We cannot take charge of ours, right? So what I'm going to be forced to do is to build a wall, protect my territory, make sure that my mental state is on point, make sure that I am mentally healthy. And that's really important, because I have to be mentally healthy to be able to relate with you, right? I have to be mentally stable to be able to have healthy relationships with you. So at the end of the day, it's even for your own good, but you do not know. You're hurting me and you think you're hurting me. You're hurting my conversation with you in the future and my relationship with you, and you're hurting my relationship with other people, because if I'm not mentally stable, I will not be able to relate with other people, not just you, right? So we should think about this thing as really broad and very deep and intentional. It is very important that we pay attention to mastering our boundaries and respecting the boundaries of other people. So thank you guys. We have finally come to the end of today's video. I know I don't want you to go too. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for staying up to this point. I hope you're able to learn a thing or two. Please do want to like, share, and subscribe. And I will see you in another video. Bye.